I know I'm a little late to the party, but I need to address this. It's a little tidbit about me. I love Resident Evil, especially the first game. Granted, I haven't played all the games yet or beat them all. In fact, I'll put a list here of what I've played. But of the games I've played so far, this is easily the worst. Now, for context, I have played both versions, the OG one and the remake. Both aren't great by any stretch, but the remake somehow made it worse. And it's no secret that not a lot of people like Resident Evil 3 Remake. But I have a bit of a personal grudge against it, hence why I'm making the video now. So today, I'm going to go over why it was such a bad experience for me. So picture this. The year is 2019, and we just got Resident Evil 2 Remake announced. Before it came out, I played both the original versions of Resident Evil 2 and 3. All the way through, just so I had some context as to what to expect for the new versions. So come when Resident Evil 2 Remake came out, I was very impressed by it. I think we all know why. Mr. Big Guy, Mr. X, or as the remake calls him, just Tyrant, which is lame. Mr. X was already scary in the first game, as you can probably see here. He may have been slow, but dude could pack a punch. So what made him different in the remake? Well, even though we did have some predetermined locations, namely when you meet him and XYZ locations. See what I did there? He would actually roam around and try and find you. So that made it infinitely scarier. It's not only that, it's also, of course, the graphical updates, the change of tank controls, thank God, and expanding the story. And for those who aren't aware, I am a fiend for game lore. So as teased in some of the older trailers, the game would expand more upon who Sherry is and what her family was like, and especially William. Thankfully, the remake kept most of the story the same, in terms of like where to go, what items there are, and the order you get them. So fast forward a few months later, we got the RE3 remake trailer. And after playing Resident Evil 2 Remake all the way through both times, 4 times technically, everyone was understandably excited at the prospect of Nemesis being a free roaming enemy as well. And yeah. Now we're going to talk about Resident Evil 3 Remake. So let's start with the main appeal of the game, Nemesis. They did expand upon him a little bit more, like actually giving him a proper introduction, but they did keep his locations predetermined, and that was crap. I know I said with Mr. X he did have some set locations where he had to be, but in the case of Nemesis, like, they basically kept it the same, even though they did give us some more tools to play around with, namely the flamethrower and the minigun, or whatever it was. And similarly with how Resident Evil 2 expanded upon their story, Resident Evil 3 didn't really try. In fact, they cut a boss battle, the Gravedigger, even though you technically couldn't fight it. It's still a boss nonetheless, and still a good one that they could have expanded upon. Like, they could actually make a way to fight it, even if it was just a one-hit kill thing. You know, so it can go both ways. Something that I'm really surprised that Resident Evil 3 didn't do was make an entire side story for Carlos. So you know how I said there were 2 routes in Resident Evil 2, and technically 4? That was because there were 2 characters to play as, Leon and Claire. In Resident Evil 3, you only had one full playthrough as Jill, though you could play as her accomplice Carlos, but it was just near the end of the game for a firefight mission. So that was annoying, and they could have easily made a new, even if it was just DLC, a new story for Carlos, to see how he got there and how he could have turned out. Hell, they could even done one for Mikhail or whatever the other guy was. Nikolai? Thank you, Future Gabriel. So let's take a break from the bad things for now, and let's talk about some of the good things that Resident Evil 3 did in comparison to the original. Let's do a little copy and paste with Resident Evil 2 and do it with Resident Evil 3, with the graphics and the improved controls. Because what would you rather have? Polygonal and tank controls? Or fluid with a third-person view? I bet a lot of you would prefer this. I'm not all of you though. I prefer this style. Eat a dick. And we all know how bad Resident Evil's original voice acting was.
That was too close. You were almost a Jill sandwich.
You're right.
Thank you, Barry. So naturally, in Resident Evil 3 Remake, they did all the voices again and gave them slightly less stereotypical accents. Though with the Russian guys, you kind of had to. It's unavoidable. So this especially applies to Carlos, who is of nondescript South American heritage, I guess is the right word. But yeah.
Stars. You mean the RPD Special Force Team?
No. You bring money. I like her.
They're coming. Get ready. Fire. Fire. Stay together.
Carlos, you didn't even think to ask fine young lady her name?
Make him sound like Speedy Gonzales, even though that probably wasn't intentional. They gave him a proper, decent voice, but without it sounding too stereotypical.
Calm down, lady. I'm no zombie. My name's Carlos, Corporal of Umbrella's Biohazard Countermeasure Force.
Hey, easy, lady. I got you.
Who are you? What are you doing?
Name's Carlos, and I'm saving you. Come on, let's get you someplace safe.
Above all else, the Nemesis fights were so much better. What was especially good, though, was the final fights, because Capcom gave Nemesis a serious overhaul. This is the original one. I don't know why they made you a fucking mutant dog, but oh well. Versus the remake. A wall-filling beast. And the music kicks so much ass in the new one as well. Even though it is a bit more linear in comparison, it's still a much more fitting final fight. Even though we don't get the dead tyrants. But I have to say the best part about Resident Evil 3, this blink and you'll miss it scene. Spin it back a little bit. You see that? That's Morgan from Darkstalkers. You see, Capcom, you do care about it. Well, that was a fun little section, wouldn't you say? Let's get back to the shit now. I know I should probably save this for the last point, but I need to say this. The remake is way too short. I've probably been just under a year removed from playing the original Resident Evil 3, so I knew, like, sort of what to expect and what could be improved upon. When I played through the remake, I got through it in less than 7 hours. I mean, here's proof. So like I said, the remake cut out one boss fight. Even if it was filler, that's still a boss fight's worth of content. Hell, they didn't even need to make it the worm. They could have just done something else. Or hell, like, bring in some new monsters. But I think the reason why it's so short is because the game relies too much on replayability so it can get all the trophies and shit. In fairness, that's fine. But you have to make sure the game is actually worth playing again. And it's actually fun to do. So yeah, maybe on a blind playthrough, fully blind, I probably would have taken a little bit longer, but still. That's abysmal, especially for a Resident Evil game. And in fairness, it is just the one story, so there isn't a whole lot of reason to play it again. But that leads on to my next point, in that it didn't expand upon anything in the game, at least from what I saw. Even though you were given a sense of free exploration in the original game, the path was still quite linear, you just needed to know where to go. With the remake, it's kind of simplified that even further by not really letting you explore anything. There are only select buildings you could enter, and only a certain few things you could actually try and collect as you went through the game. Even then, like, I was pretty adamantly going through all the archives and the notes and shit. I don't think a single one expanded upon who Nemesis was or what the creatures he spawned on other zombies was. So that did annoy me significantly. I mean, hell, even with the opening scene, where Jill has a weird nightmare where she has something grown out of her eye like she's turning into a zombie, that was never brought up ever again. Capcom could have easily run with that arc, so they could actually, have the threat of Jill becoming a zombie or being the next Nemesis or something. Or hell, they could have even alluded to how she was in Resident Evil 5 when she had the mind control thing on her chest from Wesker. So here would be the part where I would try and figure out what I would do with the game to try and make it better. But I have to say, I can't really think of a whole lot that would need improving. I know I said the game was on the badder end of the spectrum when it comes to Resident Evil games, but I have to say it kind of did its job. It kind of was a filler game just to make a trilogy. But when it comes to the remake, they could have gone so many different directions. They probably could have had an arc with Carlos where you would get the original final boss from the original game. When it came to expanding the world of Resident Evil 3, they could have done so much more to explain who Nemesis was, is, or is going to be. Well, even if it was just through a bio report or something from the lab or from the police station. At least something to actually describe the process of becoming Nemesis, or if there were even further prototypes of him. I think he is a tyrant, at least with the T-virus, but still you could have had, a female version, or even bring back my favorite boss, Lisa Trevor, even just as a mention to see what would have happened if she evolved even further. Or hell, they could have given Brad a purpose rather than just being cannon fodder for Jill to get the fuck out of town. I don't know, subtitle of the original game was Nemesis, hence why he was pretty much the only boss in the game. I mean, hell, they didn't revolve Mr. X around either version of the game. In fact, you can only get him on the B versions of the original Resident Evil 2. I think I've had my little rant now. So you have this to look forward to in the next video. So this has been Bronus Newman, and I shall see you later.